What's up, everybody? And ever since I kicked off this podcast, I've been waiting for somebody to have the sheer audacity to just see a messy, tangled mess of a storyline or a plot and just blow it all up. And Seth Hoffman, the new showrunner of The Walking Dead Dead City Season 3, did exactly that. So the season premiere of Dead City didn't just hit a reset button, which I thought was a much needed reset after the way Season 2 ended, because I wasn't the happiest with it. So what did the new showrunner do? He strapped one of those methane bombs to season 2 and he blew it all up. And we are about to dissect the massive narrative shifts, the hidden character motives, and exactly what that final dusty cliffhanger means. And another reason I think that this season is going to be better is because they increased the episode count to 8 to give us a better, fully fleshed out story rather than a quick 6 episode, which kind of ended up being a jumbled up mess because everything was just happening too quick. And that's just my opinion. So fair warning, we're going to enter spoiler territory now for season 3, episode 1, which was called Trillium. So if by chance you haven't watched it yet, go ahead and bookmark this video and come back later after you've checked the episode out. Because I definitely think this new shift in direction, the explosion that starts the episode off, and watching the entire Manhattan skyline just kind of crumble, it's definitely worth the watch. So check it out and come back and see me. So we're going to skip the beat by beat recap this time, and we're going to talk about the major narrative shifts that are actually going to move this plot forward this week. So the first shift, and a most welcome shift, was the destruction of New Babylon and that entire political machine. For an entire season, they dragged us through the exhausting logistics of New Babylon's overreaching authority. And the new showrunner Hoffman said, nope, not doing that this season. So that methane explosion that we saw at the beginning of the episode wasn't just some cool set piece. We'll call it a narrative cleansing fire, because that was the threat of New Babylon being put to rest. And all while putting New Babylon to rest and erasing that from the history of this show, we got a new horde of walkers. And I'm really glad that they kind of did this, because it stripped everything back to the bare bones of what The Walking Dead actually is, and it put our cast outside of their comfort zone for once. Because not only do they have to navigate these walkers in this situation, they also have to navigate the smoke in the sky, the ash, everything from the explosion that happened a few minutes earlier. But I really enjoyed it because for once, it seemed like everybody was back into that claustrophobic survival mode. Now, the second major shift was that unceremonious and, if I may say, extremely fast death of the Croat. You don't usually see a flagship villain survive an explosion at the cathedral, but then succumb to his wounds from a walker bite or a scratch about, 20 minutes into the episode? So I think killing off that character actually was a major flex, because it removes the theatrical comic book type villain into that desperate, gritty reality of sorts. Now, the Croat doesn't just die in some blaze of glory. He actually goes out a little bit weak, in my opinion. He actually kind of goes out as a broken down tour guide, because he takes the group to a building that's holding this single solitary methane tank that could power an incubator just to save one baby. And I'm not just saying just one baby, but you guys get what I'm saying. But it forces the story to pivot away from this cartoonish revenge plot and take itself a little bit more serious, start moving toward the logistics of community building, which seems to be what the show is going to focus on going forward. Sort of like what we got in the original show, but while there will be some fighting, they are in the end trying to build a sustainable community so they can start over. And speaking of starting over, that brings us to our third and probably our biggest shift in this entire show, if not the entire Walking Dead universe, and that is the truce. We have finally broke the cycle of that repetitive, exhausting, Maggie hates Negan. She wants to stab him in the back, but lets him live instead. It is all finally done. And for those of you who do not know, this has been going on since the season 7 premiere of the original Walking Dead show. And that was back in October of 2016. So it has been 10 years that we have been doing this cat and mouse dance with Negan and Maggie. And it has finally come to an end. And now they're going to move forward as friends of sorts. Maggie tells him that she's done and that she actually needs him. And then Negan tells her that he actually wished that she would have killed him and finished the job, because in this moment, it seems he feels like he's lost everybody that he cares about again. Now, I think by Maggie not choosing to kill Negan yet again, and then we see Negan actually carrying the Croat all the way to the place where they have the methane tank, I think it's the way of kind of signifying how they're going to be somewhat of a partnership now. And I actually think they're probably going to be friends, because we see them smiling together and joking together a lot more now. So they are no longer going to have this warden and prisoner type of dynamic. And now we're actually going to see them more on a unified front and trying to take this city to the next best place they think it can go. And oh, let's not forget that they're going to be trying to do all of this while somebody wants them dead or alive, but most likely dead will work for them. So let's talk about our characters a little bit, and let's start with our newcomers because we're pretty familiar with our old faces. So we have Renata and Luis. These two, in my opinion, represent the old New York. They are survivors who have been there since the very beginning. They grew up in this town. They have survived this town and they want to restore it back to its former glory. I think Renata is very interesting because she's not trying to go save the entire world. She just wants to restore her neighborhood and, just live peacefully and just try to get back to whatever the new normal in this world will ever look like. And we see her display this humbleness by just wanting to power up one single incubator. And then we have her brother Luis, who is using his medical background to basically run a fully fortified clinic. And like I said earlier about the whole world building, a clinic or a hospital of sorts, but somewhere where you get medical care is something that would be required to continue on in this world building. And let's go ahead and talk about Hershel as well, because this kid had me pissed off at the end of last season. He was so unappreciative of everything his mother has done for him this entire time. Now, I do think it's a little dumb that they started everything off with him being kidnapped. I think they could have did anything else, but whatever. But for this kid to be so unappreciative after everything Maggie has done for him over the years just kind of made me angry. So I'm glad that they dropped this edgy teenager who's mad at the world, who just doesn't appreciate anything. And I'm glad they actually have him now acknowledging everything that his mom did for him and actually kind of doing some character building with him as well, having him somewhat choose to somewhat study in this medical background under Luis. And, it kind of honors the Green family legacy. So this was a great shift for this character in particular, because the way season 2 ended, I thought I was going to hate this kid. But now I don't mind him so much. But if we peel back some of the layers of this episode, there's a lot in the background details as well, because the first thing I want to mention is the tribute or the dedication of this episode to Riff Hutton. Now, Riff Hutton was the original voice actor who gave the walkers their sound throughout the entire series. Then on the lore side, I'm not sure if you guys caught it or not, but did you see the way that Dillard had his vertical food chain, using the walkers to breed maggots, and then, the maggots feed the frogs feed the turkeys feed him. Now, I thought that was very, very interesting for them to throw that in there that way, because the last time I actually saw something similar to that in this entire universe was back at Terminus. And I'm really just speaking more so of the practical apocalyptic world type math and the way that you problem solve in order to survive in this world. So now we need to talk about those final minutes of the episode, because just when Maggie and Negan and the hospital crew have secured this momentary victory with the birth of the baby, the methane tank is stabilized, the camera pulls back and it rolls us down to Midtown in the midst of the destruction and the dust and everything that's going on down there. And who do we see? The Dama. Now we see her sort of trying to coerce a couple of survivors into joining whatever cause that she's cooking up in her mind this time, because I think this poses a different threat for season 3, different from what the Croat would have brought, because he's more of a blunt force killer, somewhat like Negan used to be. The Dama, what she brings is more of a psychological architect, because I think now by surviving this blast, she's going to use that to try to unite everybody who survived the blast as well. And I can also think that she can use her fall from grace, because now she's pretty much positioned in the shadows of everything. And she could probably get some of those desperate, isolated survivors to maybe do some crazy things, because she doesn't really need an army in a situation that they have right now. She just needs a few people to believe in her, and that'll turn into a little bit more, and that'll turn to a few more. And her having somewhat of the ammunition to kind of do this, because we saw one of the guys who had his leg wrapped with a wanted poster of Maggie and Negan, and she saw it, and that's clearly what she's going to do, is try to use this in order to position herself as some sort of saint and savior of the city, and these people are just criminals who just want to ruin your lives or something along those lines, but in more an apocalyptic terms. So I'm looking forward to next week's episode. I was kind of worried about this season, because after the way season 2 ended, I just didn't know if at least this particular show in the Walking Dead universe had any more juice left to squeeze. But it seems as though with the change of showrunner and the change of direction that we actually may have something fresh going forward. So I actually am looking forward to next week's episode. And the name of that episode is If History Were a Conflagration. And all of the pieces are set for some type of turf war. And I don't think we're going to get it right now, but we're definitely probably going to see more of the puzzle pieces falling in place and factions are going to be made. And we do see in some of those scenes that they're going to light up the Statue of Liberty and people are going to be coming to the islands. I do think all of this is going to play out pretty interestingly as this season goes on. And this season actually has a 8-episode run, like I said earlier, instead of a 6-episode. So it gives them more time to flesh out this story and not have to rush it. So I'm looking forward to see where they go with this and what happens with the bigger part of the universe as we go forward. Because I get the feeling that we're getting to this point where we're getting ready to merge everything again and maybe finally bring the gang back together and do something new, but with mostly of the original people, or at least most of the ones that we like. So you guys let me know what you thought about the episode. I thought it was pretty interesting. I'm looking forward to what's coming next, but you guys let me know what you think. You may have a difference of opinion because I understand the Walking Dead universe may seem to some like it may be losing some of its juice. And from somebody who still watches it and continues to support it, I understand where you guys may be coming from because there are some really tough times, but I think this new direction for Dead City is pretty refreshing, and I think you should give it a check and let me know what you think about it if you have seen it or whenever you watch it. And with all of that being said, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button on your way out, and I appreciate you all for coming, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you again.